Hello, my name is Shirley Self, and I'm here to talk astrology. Mostly I'm here to put Chiron on the Kabbalah. So I'm going to turn to the Kabbalah here. This is the Kabbalah from the Golden Dawn, from Israel Regardie's expose of the Golden Dawn, and his book was called The Golden Dawn. So it's a snake upon the tree. The snake is the path of return. You know, we return to cosmic consciousness by climbing through the tree, by climbing the pathways between, and that's the return. The fall, you know, is this that's the fall, and the fall happens at all times, is happening now. And the fall, the spring, let's talk about Saturn and Uranus. Here at Primal Will, in the house of limitless light, where I've put a Neptune and Pluto for personal reasons, here at the Primal Will is born the idea of you. And that idea of you is here at Uranus. Uranus is the outpouring force of the idea of you. And it is your blueprint. And this idea of you has got to go through Saturn. It's got to, you know, anybody who's ever tried to build something knows that every decision you make means that the following decisions are limited. So that Saturn, in order to build you, Uranus, the idea of you has to go through all these limiting things like your karma and the times that you're going to be born in. The times you're going to be born in are your 12th house, the things that screw you up. So in order for this to happen, the limitation comes through Saturn. And Saturn is the form which restricts the force. It is, as this is the root of fire, this is the root of water. Okay. Saturn, I like metaphysics because we've got such wonderful words for things. Saturn is also called the ring pass knot. And I like that. I like that because Chiron helps you pass the ring pass knot. The orbit of Chiron, you know, it goes back and forth. This is on the path here of the Empress. Back and forth. It's interesting that it is going on the path of the Empress, because this is called the Rainbow Bridge. And another interesting thing is that in 1977, when Chiron was discovered, a book was published by Ken Wilber called The Spectrum of Consciousness. And in it he discussed the levels of consciousness that we go through, or that we contain, and he related them to the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And he said that the indigo level, which is the body-mind coming together into a unit. That's the body-mind coming together into a unit. Is he called it centaur consciousness. And it's interesting that Chiron was discovered that very same year. Also about that time, I was reading about some people were talking about the indigo children starting to be born who were astonishingly full, capable, had the potential to put their Saturn and Uranus, to put their body-mind together, to come to centaur awareness. And they were called the indigo children. W.B. Yeats And Georgie Yeats, were magicians. And they were part of the Golden Dawn. And they used sex magic to produce, they used their communications with Georgie's, those she talked to. I don't know what to call them. She didn't call them anything. Anyway, she channeled information, and they used that information to do sex magic and to have wonderful children. And they had 2 wonderful children. What they wanted to have, and what they asked Georgie's information about, was to have an avatar. And they were told that Christ was getting ready to come back. But Christ was not going to come back in one person. Christ was going to come back in the hearts of a lot of people. And I think that all that connects with Chiron. What's coming with Chiron is there's been breakthroughs on all levels of human potential. We've got the birth of the superhero. We've got all of a sudden the perfectibility of the human being, perfectibility, Uranus. The perfectibility of the human being is becoming a common goal. I think of Simone Weil. I think of Shaun White, the flying tomato. What they're just doing on the physical realm is amazing. But on the mental realm, they're breaking through into genetics and understanding our genetics. Holistic healing on the Virgo level. And remember that in the myth of Chiron, he volunteered to die in order to set Prometheus free. But he had his own reasons, because he was wounded and he was in constant, terrible pain, and chose to die. What I think that means with Chiron, teaching us and telling us that we have the right to die the way we choose. We have the right to choose when to die, for instance. We don't always have the right how to die, but we ought to be able to choose when we can die. And that conversation became at full speed, thanks to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and others, during the 70s, during the discovery time of Chiron. Now, Chiron orbits through Saturn's orbit to Uranus's orbit, and that is the Empress. That is the path of the Empress. She is the door of understanding. And so this is you. This is me. This is us. When we've got all of our parts together. When we've got our mind and our desire nature and our Mars and our Jupiter and our moon and we're all together here. Then when we've got that, when we access our Jupiter, all of a sudden we can access Chiron. Chiron is Jupiter's friend, and Chiron will pick up where Jupiter. When you can access your Jupiter, Chiron will move you through. Chiron will bring you to understanding, and move you along the Rainbow Bridge to become who you are intended to become. This is the path of the hero, the path of understanding, the path of discovery and actualization of potential. Now remember, if you've seen a picture, if you've seen the Empress, the Tarot card, she is, she's quite lovely. She's sitting in a garden. She's fecund. She's pregnant. She's wearing a dress covered with roses, which are the roses are the essence of the sun. They are the goal of the sun, is to build the essence of a life, and that's called the red rose. The essence of the moon is called the white lily. Anyway, she's covered with red roses, and she's pregnant. And she's pregnant with whom you can become by living your life, by doing your adventure. And your door to that adventure is Chiron. I came to this conclusion when I saw that Chiron was in Sagittarius on the 3rd house cusp of Robin Williams' chart. Chiron in Sag on the 3rd house on Robin Williams' chart. That made a believer out of me. So you can dive into your Chiron, and it is going to lead you into your adventure, the adventure of your life. He is going to lead you across to who you need to become. So what Chiron does, he facilitates change without taking part in the action. Chiron is a planetoid, but there's no evidence that Chiron has energy in itself like these guys do. He's a planetoid. He came into this. He came into his orbit quite suddenly, and could leave whenever he gets an ocean. He's a planetoid. He is a catalyst. He facilitates change. When I was a potter, I learned there were several beautiful red colors which can only be obtained in the presence of gold. And that means you lose the gold. You have to mix the gold into the solution. But the gold is not changed by the firing. The elements that you put in there to make the gold color are fused, are transformed into red, beautiful red. But the gold is not changed. But if you take out the gold and don't put in the gold, you do not get that red. Chiron, it's just interesting to me that Chiron is a pot of gold. He's a catalyst. When he aspects a planet, he does not. He is not changed by that planet. The planet is changed by Chiron, because Chiron, remember, is a maverick, and his aspects to a planet will bring that planet to understanding of who he is. Uranus, who he is, not who the world expects him to be, not who his mother thinks he is, but who he or she is. Chiron will shake you loose of attachments that are not yours. Chiron is a catalyst. The path of the Empress. Now, Venus, as you know, is the planet of desire. She is the nature of the force. She's the planet of desire. She is a desire. So is he. So is the Tower. Notice that these are both mediating. They affect each other. Uranus affects Saturn, and Saturn affects Uranus. This, too, is mediating. Mercury affects Venus, and Venus affects Mercury. And this is Mars, the Tower. Now, the Tower. The Tower simply means, and it's a really frightening. It's lightning striking your belief system, and it's a fall. But the Tower is truly, if you want, and if you have an idea of what you want, you have to do it. You have to use your Mars to get it. If you know what you want, you have to use your Mars to get it. That's all the Tower says. Here. If you know what you have right now, and you know what you want, the Empress will help you get it. If it's yours, she will help you get it. Chiron will help you get it. So it's Chiron that helps you, your consciousness, to break through limitations. And understanding breaks through Saturn's limitation. Break through those limitations to become who you are. Because if you can use your Mars to get you what you want, and you can tame your Mars, just doing this will tame that Mars. If you can tame that Mars, then you can achieve your Jupiter. Understand, this is not a mating path. This is not go back and forth. Mars goes to Jupiter. And you must tame your Jupiter before you can fully use your Mars. I'm sorry, you must tame your Mars before you can fully use your Jupiter. Got a little backwards there, hopefully, but it doesn't work that way. Okay, and so if you can work your Chiron, and you can actually do something, then your world will go around, and you will achieve your goals. You will achieve your perfection. Remember that perfection is a process, not a completion. Perfection is a process. And if you're using your desire properly, then you're working toward perfection. Let's see what else I have to tell you. Oh, yeah, and it matters which way Chiron is moving here. Understand, Chiron takes about 49 years, average. It averages 49 years to make a complete cycle. So you're going to have your Chiron return before you have your Saturn return. My Chiron return was quite painful, which dealing with my Chiron return made my Saturn return a piece of cake. So, and that 49 is 7 sevens. 7 is a very neat number. It has everything to do with the future. If you've got 7, you're loaded for bear. Now the bear is the future. If you've got 7, you are. 7 is possibilities. 7 is virtually the Empress. So Chiron takes 7 sevens to make its return. When it's going this way, it's carrying the rigidity of Saturn to loosen it up at Uranus, and when it's going this way, it's carrying the chaos of Uranus to get sorted out and some discipline over at Saturn. Now, Chiron was at Uranus at aphelion in when it was in 1970. So it was when it was discovered. It was moving from chaos to Saturn, right? Okay, and it reached Saturn at perihelion February 1996. And since then, we've been moving rigid Saturnisms back to Uranus, and we will get back to Uranus at 2022. And you have all noticed that the Uranus forces are growing and growing. Okay, and it will be in, Chiron will be in Aries in 2022. And then back to Saturn we will go, and we'll get there in 2047 in Libra. So now, in your own chart, let's look at Chiron through the zodiac. How is that? That's pretty good. Let's see if she'll stay there. Okay. Okay, Chiron, the wound of Chiron. When you have aspects to personal planets, then the wound that happened was probably something that was going on in the family. You have Chiron aspects to outer planets, then the whole family was disturbed by something that was common, something that was outside, famine, war, those kinds of fun things. So, and you can analyze the kind of what was going on by looking at your Chiron and seeing what aspects it was making and see what kind of environment you were born into. The wounded healer archetype was actually came from Carl Jung. The premise to the wounded healer is that all humans undergo a deep challenge in their youth. It becomes their core wounding. And or healing or transmuting that wound develops the strength and the gifts that are then used to help others. And that is Chiron. Okay, in the first house, and first house or Aries. Okay, you can't even see it. I need to move you back just a little bit. This over here is Aries. Okay, Chiron in the first house, or Aries, is to a wound to Aries. A wound to who you think you are. Now, that's going to be a sort of an alienation and a feeling of being a loner for good reason, that the world doesn't like you. You can feel real unsure. You can feel on edge to have Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries has a lot to do with war. Chiron in the second house or in Taurus. Now that's going to screw with your self-worth and your self-esteem. And that's where Donald Trump has his Chiron, sandwiched between Jupiter and maybe Neptune. Chiron and Libra in the second house. So Chiron right there, and a wounded self-worth. Now, so you're going to have the screwed up attitude toward money, because chances are that money was used as a tool to manipulate you. There can be a real lack of trust and a real need to develop self-confidence and to use your talents, which is the way to develop self-confidence. And you got Chiron in the third house or in Gemini, and there's going to be something wrong with something screwed up with your communications. You're going to be scared to speak up, or there's going to be taboo subjects. And you're going to have to learn to communicate bravely with self-confidence. And it is interesting to me that Elizabeth Smart, who, if you'll remember correctly, was that young Mormon girl who was stolen and kept captive by this madman and his wife for, I don't know how long, but quite a while, maybe more than a year. And she had Chiron in Gemini in the fifth house. And she didn't have the guts to speak up. She did not. She had very many opportunities to speak up and to say, help! These idiots have got me. But she did not. But she did, and has since spoken out and has written a book. So, and that is learning to communicate, and and for Elizabeth, learning to communicate as your own creative talent, as your own son's desire. Learning to communicate is her way into her adventure. Okay, we come now to the fourth house. Now that is going to be, you're going to have something difficult about your parents. Probably somebody One of your parents will be at least emotionally. Cancer there is an emotional sign, emotional, way emotional sign, and so it's possible that it be demanded that you not be emotional, or that emotionality is overdone, or well, you can often it says that you can have one functioning parent, and you can feel very resentful about that, and you can become very distrustful of whichever gender that parent is. For me, it was I have my Chiron in Cancer in the 7th. So I had not only did I have an absent parent, but I became very distrustful of my mother, the dominant parent. And Chiron being in Cancer, when I, very shortly after my Saturn return, I joined Women's Liberation, diving right into that Chiron. And so it pays to develop to develop understanding and a little psychology in order to develop your security, because Chiron in Cancer will make you feel deeply insecure. Chiron in the 5th house or in Leo, your creative talents are belittled or suppressed. You can be inhibited. You can lack passion. You can lack solar fire. You can feel very much inhibited and not good enough. And what you have to do is to use your sun and to develop passion. And to jump into that. So many artistic types, so many creative types I've found in my research on Chiron have Chiron right there. So many theater types. Well, Chiron in Leo is theater. And so Chiron in the 5th house can be very, very useful for creative people. And Chiron in the 5th house means you are a creative person. Pay attention. Chiron in the 6th, or Virgo. I mean, that's the cruelty of criticism, and that's Virgo. It can give you a real edginess because you're never good enough, ever. Because it's 6th house. You can hate or fear change. 6th house is all about how one must change, and the changes that are required of one for self-mastery. So people there definitely need to work on healthy routines, etc. Che Guevara had a Chiron right there. And I do not remember. I do remember. It was in Taurus. It was in Taurus. The thing about Chiron in Taurus is if it belongs to a man, or Chiron in the 2nd, if it belongs to a man, it would definitely, they will often overcompensate by being incredibly machismo. And I think of Dr. Che Guevara, tooling around South America on his Harley. It probably wasn't a Harley. It was probably an Indian. But whatever. How macho. How beautiful. And he was. So Chiron in the 7th, or in Libra over there. Now that's an isolation. That's isolation. That is some wound to your ability to do relationships. And that's where my Chiron is. is in the 7th. So if you've got a Chiron and Libra or in the 7th, you will struggle with relationships. And remember that our president, Donald, has Chiron and Libra in the 2nd house. So his relationships are very much hooked up with money. I think that the key to dealing with that Chiron over there is that you need to strengthen this so that you feel, so that you have a sense of yourself, so that you do not need other people to avoid feeling empty. And when you do not need other people to avoid feeling empty, here they come. Okay, Chiron in the 8th house or in Scorpio. Now that's going to be a wounding to intimacy. A wounding to intimacy. These are people who will never want to take off their clothes, and I mean that metaphorically. They're very isolated. They feel like they have a definite lack of support from other people. And a way around that, I think, is to learn to be helpful to others in need. Join the volunteer fire department. Okay, we come around to Chiron in Sag, or in the 9th house, and that can be struggles with higher education. But it is all that Sagittarius stuff is going to take a beating. Faith in the world, faith somewhere, wherever that Sagittarius is. Robin Williams had that Chiron right here, and he had no faith that what he was saying would be heard. His Chiron was also squared to, I think, to Saturn up in here, which shows that he was not the wild child that he was not appreciated by his parents, or at least by one of them. So where was I? Oh, I was up there. Chiron in Sagittarius can be a lot of regret and bitterness and a lack of faith wherever it is put. And so Chiron in the 10th, or a conjunct Capricorn. Now that too can be a struggle with the schooling system that can be disapproved of by whoever is boss. So I would so the top parent does not approve of you or engage with you. This can be very isolating up there. It can give you a fear of the world. The world is not a nice place if you have Chiron in Capricorn. That is the feeling. Okay, the Chiron in the 11th or in Aquarius. The 11th house is the house of the outlier, the outcast. And so, being opposite over here, opposite Leo, the Chiron in Aquarius can often feel rejected by their peers. They are outcast. Chiron in the 12th, over here, Chiron in Pisces. Now the healer, if you got a Chiron in Pisces or in the 12th, that accents and tells you right there that you are a healer. You're not just any old body. You are a healer. Mother Teresa had Chiron in Pisces right on the cusp of the 7th house. Chiron in Pisces is often self-limitation. People hold themselves back for some, it's emotional because it's Pisces. Some fear. And those people definitely need some emotional healing. Okay, so that's Chiron, going around the zodiac. Look in your horoscope for where your Chiron is. And notice how important that spot is to your life. That spot is your door. That spot has led you into your adventure, the adventure of your lifetime. That Chiron, as it moves around your chart, will aspect planets and angles, and it will knock something loose in them, either gently or quite roughly. Knock something loose. Any attachment that is on that planet that does not belong on that planet, any focus of the energy of that planet that is the wrong focus of the energy of that planet, will be set straight by Chiron. And Chiron is a maverick, does not want us to be like everybody else. Chiron is not of the norm, nor are you. Chiron will demand of you your uniqueness. If you ignore your Chiron, you will, of course, get sick or sicken your life. You can't ignore Chiron. It will kick you right where you notice it when it comes around. Use it. Find out where it is now. Right now, Chiron is in Pisces. Right at the end of Pisces. It is actually getting ready to go into Aries. Chiron in Pisces, the chart of the United States. Let's see if I have that chart here somewhere. I do. The chart of the United States, let me show you that. You see that? Has intercepted Pisces right down in the third house. Now, what that is going to mean, what that does mean, is you'll notice the wounding in our public discourse. The lack of faith that we have. It is opposite our Neptune. Let me show you that again. It is opposite Neptune up there in the ninth house. Chiron is getting ready to move into Aries. And we have Chiron in Aries, which speaks to the way we took over this land, killing and dislocating the native peoples. Chiron moving through the United States chart is very interesting, and I will be most interested to see what it does when it moves into Aries. So anyway, that is Chiron. Trust me, it's important. And if you get to know your Chiron, you will find that it is very informative in your chart. So it was good to talk to you. I will see you again soon. Until then, may the goddess bless you.